Hello, Simone. I am excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to be using the split up of the Flotilla that Greta Thunberg was involved in and on the board of over a person coming out as gay. And then the Muslims on it who were running a lot of stuff was like, well, we won't be part of it then. And it's still sort of operational, but it's having a lot of issues. We'll be using this as a framing device to talk about what has been happening increasingly over just the last couple months, which is a split up or like a forced sort of reconciling in the left between, and by the way, we found some video of Greta Thunberg's Flotilla here. A reconciling of many people thought, and it's sort of like every non-white group largely thought that the left was all about centering them, and they're learning that it's not. And while we will be talking about, one of the things we'll be talking about is the conflict between the Black first part of the left and the Palestine first part of the left, which is like way more gruesome than you would think, specifically because, okay, Simone, are you aware that there are other genocides in the world that are significantly larger than, if you consider Gaza a genocide, than what's going on in Gaza? Are you aware of this?
Nothing's coming up in the news. I couldn't.
Well, no. Of course, nobody's talking about it. None of the leftists are freaking out about it. Greta Thunberg's not doing anything about it. But no, there's significant, multiple larger genocides. But the largest genocide in the world right now is happening in the Sudan. Do you know who is killing who in this genocide?
No.
Arabs are killing blacks.
Oh, no. Oh.
And you can say, oh, come on, Malcolm, you must be misframing it. So this is from an AI here. Because I ask, is this actually true? Yes. The ongoing genocide in Sudan, particularly in the Darfur region, largely involves Arab-dominated forces led by the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, and allied Arab militias perpetrating systemic atrocities against non-Arab, often referred to as Black or African ethnic groups, such as the Malsuti, Fur, and Zagazwi. I can't pronounce those. This ethnic dimension is the core driver of the violence. So yeah.
I remember there being Darfur activists in college.
Yeah, so it is possible to protest Darfur. We just stopped doing it within the current era of leftist media.
Got tired of it. We're like,
well, no,
I don't
didn't
know.
Get tired of it. This is a completely new conflict that's happening in the
This
same
is a
region.
new one. Okay, so this is not the Darfur of like.
Well, obviously they're connected, but it's a new genocide. Yes, it is mass murder of children, mass graves, really horrifying stuff. And then people will be like, well, we're not funding this one. And it's like, well, buckle up, buddy, because guess who is funding them? The UAE. And they're doing it to get rid of the blacks in the region so that they can control the ports more easily and use it to export gold, because I think they get like 80% of the gold from the region or something. We're not going to go too far into that. But throughout this, what you will find is I think that many people, they see like one dimension here where they're like, they see the Gaza Palestine thing and they're like, this is at odds with leftist views around gay rights, which we'll get into. It is, but I think they miss how sort of unilaterally antithetical to most purported urban monoculture and leftist values. The Arab community, and specifically, obviously, Arab communities are different and there's diversity within the communities, but I'm talking about dominant beliefs in these communities are towards their other agendas, like helping, for example, Black people. And I think that we're sort of coming to a head. We're also going to talk about what has recently happened, which is a widespread movement of LGBT organizations that are splitting from trans organizations, and many activists recently with this idea that they are going to push like a divorce or a forced separating. To go to the gay stuff, because you're like, how, anti-gay is a place like Gaza, okay? So in 2000, there were 4 Palestinians killed in the Gaza West Bank for just being gay, which led to a lot of gay people in Gaza to flee to Israel, where they were accepted for asylum to protect themselves from the Gazans. If the Gazans controlled like Jerusalem, for example, the gay people in Jerusalem would be killed. They're able to go there for protection now because they are killed in Gaza. Now, what's really wild here is we actually have like quite detailed like torture and murder of gay people because of captured records that they have found of a senior Hamas commander in Gaza who was arrested, beaten, placed in solitary confinement before being murdered, predominantly because he was found to be gay. Other captured documents revealed that they tortured and killed two other gay members, specifically for, and I love this because this is extensively documented in Hamas's own records,
Oh no.
that these two people were killed because they gay raped some of the Israeli captives, which implies that regular graping must have been very common if they thought they could get away with gay graping in an Islamic. Like, I love when people are like, "Oh, no." Even though the hostages have said yes, grape is very common among the hostages.
Yeah,
like,
but
"Oh,
they're
no,
like, it's fine. Just don't be gay about it.
don't be gay about it, guys."
Oh man. Okay.
By the way, for the other, if you want to get an idea of like the scale of the various genocides that we're looking at in the world right now, the one that is Arabs killing blacks in the Sudan, there have been around 150,000 deaths and around 12 million people are displaced, with 11 million internal displacement, 3 million refugees. And then if you look at the next biggest, which is again not the Gaza war, it's the DRC Eastern conflict, it's had around 100,000 casualties, 7 million refugees. And then if you look at the Gaza war, if you consider this a genocide, it has just 64,300 casualties, which would make it about half the size of what's going on in the Sudan right now, but only around 1.9 million people. And keep in mind, like this is still a lot of people. I'm not saying that this is a good thing.
Any death is tragic, but if we're talking about effective altruism or tackling the biggest atrocities in terms
would
of,
it be much easier to end the Sudan conflict than it would be to end the conflict that we're dealing with in Israel and Gaza right now? Like, it's a much more realistic thing to do. And this is why when you talk about something like Greta Thunberg, and I think this is really telling, and I want to get into the psychology of this. Why does she, climate activist, decide one day not to address the biggest genocides in the world? And people will be like, well, just because a genocide's happening in another region doesn't mean you can't be talking about a genocide in this region, right?
well, isn't she supposed to be the id of the left? I mean,
right. Yeah, well, she is kind of, but what I want to find here is when a leftist is like, well, you can't complain about the genocide here and then say that like we shouldn't be talking about the genocide here. And I'm like, I'm not saying that, right? But the problem is I can go to your tweets. I can look at what your sort of lieutenants are doing, your Greta Thunbergs, and not a one of them. I mean, I would argue that the tweets that the Sudan conflict is getting, despite being significantly larger, is probably 0.5% of the tweets that Gaza gets from leftist activists. So the question is why don't you talk about it when it's Arabs killing blacks? Why do you talk about it when it's Jews killing Arabs? Like, and Arab, and I'll put a clip on the screen here. It's in another language, but for context here, so you don't actually have to read the full thing. This is the Palestinian analyst Manar Shakif on Al Jazeera TV, so mainstream TV, in the Middle East, and they're even talking about this there. He pointed out that more people have been killed in the Sudan than Gaza in the past 2 years, but he then goes on to say, but nobody cares about them because the blood of Palestinians is precious. You don't see people in US colleges protesting their death.
صحيح عندنا ضحايا كثير وبنتحمل، لكن شوف حتى ضحايانا دمها غالي. العالم كله مهزوز وهو يشوف غزة. طيب أقول لك في السودان صار في تهجير وصار في قتل أكثر من اللي صار بفلسطين بهالسنتين هدول. نعم صحيح. ولا حدا حاسس فيهم ولا حدا بيحكي عنهم، بينما إحنا مظاهرات بتقوم في الجامعات في كل مكان.
They believe and there is a belief, and I'll note this as somebody who hangs out with like upper class Arabs and stuff like this. They are the only okay, so I lived in Korea for a long time. You lived in Japan for a long time. There is an undercurrent of like racism against like Black people in those countries. But if you are among like upper class educated people, you would not expect racist jokes. Among upper class Arabs who I hang out with, racist jokes against Blacks are very common. There's a much more open disdain in those communities towards Black communities.
For those who like to group together Free Palestine, Free Sudan, Free the Congo, I want you to take a look at this. The young black boy in that clip, his name is Joshua Malito Malau. He was a Tanzanian student who was in Israel studying agriculture so that he could learn and take it home to his family, help his country. He was brutally murdered by Hamas. They knew he wasn't Jewish. They knew he wasn't Israeli. They didn't care. They terrorized him, tortured him, killed him, and then shot him several times in the head after they killed him. This is how Hamas and the broader Islamic jihadist world feels about Africans, which is why they enslave them by the millions across the African continent, including in places like Sudan. Stop claiming solidarity where there is none. Stop.
And people will be like, well, you know, you can't blame a community just for what its, you know, elites are doing. And we'll get into, well, it's not just the elites. There have been campaigns in some of these countries of going around and lynching people recently and stuff like that. So I guess it's pretty horrifying. And I want to be clear here, if you are thinking to yourself, well, you know, my fellow activists are just unaware that there is a giant other genocide of Arabs killing black people. And that is why they're not protesting it. That's why they're not talking about it. And I'd be like, well, somebody in your movement is educated, right? Like, there's somebody at the top of your movement. Why is it that the people at the top of your movement, in terms of the information they're filtering down to people under them, when it can be used to villainize Jews, they are highlighting that information. When that information could be used to protect black communities, they are hiding that information. You have to ask yourself, what does that show about their actual values? Before I go further, do you want any comments here about sort of what's going on in the left? And I think that the right did a very good job of sort of forcing the left for a long time, like, look at it, look at what they do to gays. But we haven't done the same with blacks yet. And I think we need to do the same with blacks as well. Look at what they do to blacks.
I think that's fair. I mean, what I appreciate about the way that actually several people, I don't know if this is just a trending idea right now, who follow this podcast, have spoken with us or DM'd us or emailed us about this reality that they're seeing, that basically the only actually woke people who are woke, who identify as woke, are white, because every other group is just an interest group, or specifically, I should say, white, cis, non-disabled people, because everyone else is just a special interest group. And as soon as it comes up in the movement that it's their interest group versus the priorities of a different interest group, and if those come into conflict in any way, then it just starts to fall apart. And I had never even considered that could be.
We were dealing with recently, who's like super woke, and the moment like crack came up, she thought she was like the Queen of Sheba, like Prince Ali walking into a place, getting to shut other people down in the conversation, and just look very buffoonish in context. I'm not going to go too into it, but you see this, right? Yeah, like that's why they're a part of this, because they think that they are afforded special status.
Yeah, and in the moment that you're not afforded special status, you try to attack whatever group is taking it away. But it just, I don't know. I had believed, I'd labored under the impression that every member of the woke contingency contributed equally to the game of intersectionality, and would defer appropriately to whatever like was considered to be the most worthy cause or subgroup or in need subgroup of the moment. And then all this information has been sent to us on how that is not actually the case. And sort of like gay rights or Black rights versus Palestine is just one of, it turns out, quite a few examples of this. And it's mind blowing to me, because I really didn't understand that this was just a mostly, it's a very varied supremacy culture.
Yeah.
With one, like with a substrate that is willing to consistently put itself at the bottom. And that is cis, non-disabled white people.
Yes.
So
Or
weird. It's
pretend to
so
put themselves
weird.
at the bottom. They never do for long. I mean, if they're in it long enough, all of a sudden now they're genderqueer, or now
Well,
they're
yeah, that's right.
they're
Yeah.
neurodiverse, or now they're, that's the way it works. But I want to go into this more, like this Arab-Black conflict as part of this, because this, just getting to this, and we'll probably do another episode where we dive deeper into this. I found this really fascinating, and I personally knew that Arabs are like racist against Black people more than other groups, but I didn't realize that, like, generally whenever they get the chance, they start trying to exterminate any neighboring Black population.
Yeah, I didn't. That's
And I wasn't aware of this, and I think that, like, this needs to be part of the discourse more, maybe. So in Sudan,
if this is actually a thing. I just, no one's ever talked to me about it. This is mind blowing to me.
So we talked about this in Sudan during the First and Second Sudanese Wars. So this is the earlier set of wars, right, that you were talking about, the Darfur conflict that you heard about, 1955 to 2005. An estimated 2.5 to 3.5 million Black indigenous Africans were killed or ethnically cleansed by racially motivated attacks by Arabs.
So that was by Arabs too.
Yes, that was by Arabs too, yes. Then in Mauritania, despite slavery's official ban in 1981, codified in 2007. So in Mauritania, slavery wasn't banned until 2007, okay? Even today, 10 to 20% of the population remains enslaved, and it is almost universally the darker skinned Mauritanians, or the Black Mauritanians. So they still keep slaves, and they were very, very big in the slave trade. Obviously, the Barbary Coast and everything like that.
Great.
So in Egypt, former President Anwar Sadat, a Nubian, so Black, faced racial insults for appearing, quote unquote, not Egyptian enough, dubbed Nasser's Black Poodle. Soccer player Sadiqa quit national play as fans chanted racial slurs and displayed a black dog on his jersey. Sudanese refugees and darker-skinned Egyptians report daily bias, discrimination, and abuse. Libya, 2000. Anti-African riots saw Black migrants and called them... Oh, by the way, I should note, in Darfur, when they mass murder people, the general slur that is used by the Arabs for the Blacks that they are killing is slave. Their job is to kill the slaves. So that's sort of like, in their language, the N-word, but like even more direct. So you get an idea of what the vibe is here, people.
It's really bad.
Libya, in 2000, anti-African riots saw Black migrants called, quote unquote, slaves and, quote unquote, animals. During the 2011 civil war, Amnesty International documented massacres of Black Libyans and sub-Saharan Africans solely based on skin color. In Morocco, the Trans-Saharan slave trade's legacy endures, with Black Moroccans derogatorily called abda, or slave, or kanda, servant. This is like a regular thing there. This is not like, in the US, you don't actually get racial slurs anymore. This is a normal part of daily life of being Black in one of these countries. And they still have the segregation on school buses, sub-Saharan migrants, and other forms of the sort of apartheid.
Okay. Wow.
By the way, I love that. Yeah, no. I wanna lift this, because they keep saying, well, just because there's a genocide in one region doesn't mean I can't talk about a genocide in another region. And you then have to say, well, except this genocide is about twice the size, easier to stop, and you're not talking about it even 1% the amount you're talking about the other region. Like, Greta Thunberg effing tried to like go to Gaza, did the whole thing, was arrested, refused to watch any of the videos of the atrocities that took place that day because I'm just refusing to be educated on the topic, was sent back by Israel, goes back on another flotilla, goes to Gaza again. Like,
I didn't even know. I thought she just stopped. That's crazy.
Could she not have done Sudan next? Could she not have done, like, if you're doing this for multiple years, why not do 1 year for Gaza and 1 year for Sudan, right? Like, that seems like a thing, right? But to continue here, and the reason I'm pointing all this out is I'm not pointing out that like Arabs are intrinsically racist or anything like that. This is not the point. But what I am saying is Arabs have a distinct culture that is unique to their regions, as distinct as American and Korean and American and Japanese. And you might have disagreements with parts of their culture. But I think everybody has a right to their individual culture. But I think it's also important to recognize when aspects of a culture that are normative within a region are antagonistic to your stated objective. Like when you're like, okay, we'll all get together and we won't fight for a little bit just to get the conflict resolved and this particular region, right? It's important to note if everyone of the group that you're trying to save is like, and once we have our arms freed up again, let's start funding those Sudanese. Right now we're splitting our money. We can expand our influence in Africa as well. So it's important to note this stuff, right? And that I think it's also useful for conservatives who are fooled by the progressive rhetoric and do not understand how much we have in common with, in terms of our goals, with Christian Africans for sort of the planet, for humanity. This is a group that is very easy for us to work with, and in many cases, even Muslim Africans. I'll point out here that when I talk about Arabs murdering blacks in these regions, I'm not talking about. While they do happen to be Muslims, it is important to note that they are murdering the Africans not because of their religion, but because of their skin color. They don't really care if they're Muslim or not. Not that makes it better, but it is an important note. Okay, so you were under the impression that the Flotilla thing, because this is what the Flotilla is trying to say, is, it's not because they're gay. It's not because we have a bunch of Muslims who refuse to work with gays. So let's read parts of the...
It's propaganda from the Zionist lobby.
The Zionist lobby, yes. The
Zionist lobby.
Can anti-Semitism bring them together? So we'll see. So
the great uniter. Yes, there we go.
Yeah. And if anybody here is listening to this and they're like, why do you need to point out the racism that's normalized within many Arab communities? It's because it is framed today within leftist rhetoric that white populations, so let's say Northern European populations, are racist, vile people, right? And what I'm pointing out here is, and this is important, that the amount of racism that you are going to see in any country dominated by Northern Europeans is absolutely astronomically minuscule anti-Black racism when contrasted with the amount you're going to see in any country dominated by Arabs. And this isn't to say Arabs are worse. Like, people have a right to ethno preferences, but I think that there's this like delusion, right? That these two groups are friends in some way. And I'd note here, if you're a Black person and you're watching this and you believe that Egypt used to be Black, it's more complicated than a lot of people make it seem. There were periods where Nubians had control or whatever, but suppose you do believe that Egypt used to be Black. You got to ask yourself why it's Arab now then. Why do Black people who go there, that would imply that somebody got rid of all the Black people who used to live in Egypt. Was it Yaqub? What did they call him? Yaquba or whatever? The one from the...
Oh, the evil one?
Muslim, yeah. Crazy.
Who made white people?
Yeah, who made white people. What was it, him?
It was Yaqub, right?
Yaqub. Or you could say it's the populations that are there right now that got rid of the original population. Now, that isn't actually what happened, although there was large and violent Arab migrations into Northern Africa, but the populations that were there before are not what many people would consider Black Africa. It doesn't necessarily matter. Anyway, to continue here, I'm just pointing out that even from their own propaganda, questions should be coming up. Like, if North Africa used to be Black, why isn't it Black now? And the people who are living there who aren't Black probably have something to do with that. Again, that's not exactly what happened, and a lot of this happened a long time ago. And Egypt is one of the less racist of the countries that we're talking about. Although a Black soccer player quit due to the amount of racism he dealt with in the country. So, like,
it's a pretty big deal.
There. Yeah. GSF co-coordinator Khalid Bajami announced his resignation in protest at the presence of LGBT activists in the Flotilla, including Safi Adi, who identified as a queer activist. He said, quote, "We were lied to about the identity of some of the participants in the vanguard of the Flotilla. I accuse the organizers of hiding a hidden aspect from us," end quote. He complained in 2 streams on social media. Other figures, including activist Marin Meftin and presenter Samir Elfey, condemned what they saw as an attempt to impose culturally progressive agenda unrelated to the Palestinian cause, describing it as a, quote, red line crossed, end quote, and an attack on, quote, societal values, end quote. And note, they didn't like try to make this about promoting gay agenda or anything, right? Like they didn't like confuse gay agenda with the agenda tied to Palestine. Just a person who was on one of the boats happened to be gay. He wasn't like doing gay stuff. He wasn't like hitting on them or promoting gay stuff while they were doing it. He just existed as a gay person on not their boat, one of the boats.
Well, he didn't hide it. Like his Instagram bio is rainbow, communist, queer, militant based in Tunisia, from the river to the sea. But he did say queer and there was a rainbow. So he wasn't hiding it.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a great quote from one of them who left over this. This is El Wafid. Quote, Palestine is first and foremost the cause of Muslims. It cannot be separated from its spiritual and religious dimensions, with Jerusalem at the heart of its symbols and destiny. So why involve in it dubious activists serving other agendas that do not concern us and have nothing to do with Gaza, such as homosexuality? Exclamation, question mark. And note here, again, he wasn't like promoting homosexuality. He just existed as a gay person. They're like, you don't understand how important it is that we kill gay people.
His plan wasn't to go and provide aid and then turn Palestine gay or anything.
No. But I think that this is the thing. The progressives think that this is what's going to happen, and they don't understand that they're not breeding. They're not really relevant. They're sort of idiotic patsies for other people's agenda. And we, those of us who are breeding and think about the future, need to be aware of where our potential allies are and where are the groups that are most likely to ally against us. Even if we are temporarily allied with them for now. And I think conservatives in the United States, my brother in Christ, Black Christian Africans are one of our strongest potential allies going into the future. They are a high fertility group. They may not be high technology or high industry right now, but that doesn't mean that we aren't going to still benefit from having allies in some regions that are very, very populous. And there are also regions that historically like conservative Americans. If you are unaware, Bush, for example, is very, very popular in Africa. And I know
W. Bush?
Yeah, W. Bush is extremely popular in Africa. And I will note here, if you're like,
is that because of his work on AIDS?
It's because of his work on a lot of things. Yeah. He dealt with Africa in a way that sort of took them seriously. So if you look at like shutting down US aid and people are like, well, that's going to get Africans to like hate you. And it's like, no, if you actually look at what was happening in these communities where this stuff was being distributed, they thought that they were like being sterilized and stuff. The workers, there's a reason why they talked about how many US aid workers were killed. You don't kill someone who you think is there to help you. They were forcing their views on them in the same way they forced them on us. They don't like this stuff any more than we do. You know, and if you're, I don't want to go too deep on that stuff. But what I'm pointing out here is they don't want or need us to be forcing aid down their throats to build alliances with them. That's not the way the African Christian communities are. I won't go too much, but you see what I mean.
So what happened with the flotilla that I read was that this sort of really slowed things down. It made them look bad.
Greta Thunberg resigned from her post.
She stepped down from her like board position. She still refers to herself as an active supporter and participant, but not in a leadership capacity. So they sort of lost her leadership endorsement. It's not a good look for them. It's not helping the cause.
Well, and for me, it was embarrassing to find out that she's still involved with this. She did her thing with the flotilla. She's not getting them more attention now or anything like that. Is this just because she doesn't have a home or something and she just lives to be an activist? And I love so she goes around and she, in this piece that I didn't quote it, but she was talking about how I'm not doing this for attention. You know, I'm doing this to get aid for the people in Palestine. This flotilla thing has been operational for like 10 years at this point. They have only once early on, and it was only a fairly small amount, gotten any aid through to the people of Palestine. And they've spent many tens of millions of dollars on operating this. The amount of lives in Palestine they could have saved by actually working to get aid to them instead of playing Yacht Week with a bunch of other rich kids on, frankly, what look like pretty expensive boats. You know, I note they're not like super rich people yachts, but they cost a pretty penny when you see these boats. And getting to do this for years on end, it looks like Greta has. That's a deeply selfish thing to do. a very deeply selfish thing to do, which directly interferes with what you say your goal is. And I love it when she says, because if she says, I'm not doing this for attention, why don't do aid in a way that actually gets it to people?
Why not? That sounds good. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's do that. I don't like that there are people suffering anywhere. Yeah, it bothers me when people contribute to nonprofits that are wasteful or efforts that are wasteful, and that's why we're so against any sort of performative action. Are you going to talk about the Palestinians versus Black activists during the 2024 election? Yeah, we were sent a clip by someone, and I hadn't heard about this, but there was a very real rift on the U.S. left during the 2024 presidential election that crystallized around Kamala Harris's candidacy, because pro-Palestine activists felt that Harris was too supportive of Israel and not responsive enough to demands for ending U.S. military aid, which, one, I just think shows how, I don't like using this word, but how dumb Palestinian activists are. Because it's like, oh, you think Trump is going to be nicer? Like, have you not heard of, but that is so what Palestine is. It's like either 100% my way exactly, or no deal.
Well, no, but you saw this. Israel multiple times, and we'll do an episode on this eventually. Just will take so much research for the people who are going to complain. But they have offered peaceful solutions to end hostilities in the region.
Yeah.
And they basically keep getting told. So actually, I can just read a take up of it. They didn't give them full sovereignty. But again, when they have, militias have come up and they've started murdering nearby Jewish populations. So why would you?
Yeah.
They continue to control the airspace, which they... Again, why would you do that when they keep bombing you?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't accept that Jerusalem was not going to be a full Palestinian capital versus
their demands are unreasonable, and this is also reflected.
Yeah, they said we need control of Jerusalem. Which why would they choose to? They're in the position of power here, people. Like you don't get a. It's. They have demanded every time it's come to push to shove. One of the things I always say is, well, we need a rejection of Israel's existence. Like this was in the Hamas charter until 2017. There was, if you actually study the history of the region instead of like what the leftists tell you, there have been multiple completely reasonable offers made to the other side, and they've always been said, no, we want everything back. All of you guys get out. And that's just not realistic.
It's delusional, and yet here we are again. It's 2024 election.
It's not delusional. It's a religiously motivated demand.
I guess it's they really don't actually care that much about any outcome, but the one outcome that they care about. So they're not gonna. But no, I think even if I wanted, like, let's say I was like, no, my end game is 100% like enslave the Jews in Israel and take over Jerusalem and have complete control of the region, I would still accept the concessions and creep my way in.
No, because what they were afraid of is if they accepted the concessions and created a two-state solution, then other Arab states would recognize Israel, which would
they'd stop funding them or something.
Well, no, there would be more of a problem if they attacked Israel with the other Arab countries, because they look a lot of these regions, like your day job, your funding coming into this country is like one of the major industries is being basically an anti-Jewish terrorist, and the money is coming in from that, whether it's from Qatar or from Iran or from any of the competing groups. Basically, right now the way things are, and one of the reasons why they don't actually want a two-state solution, even the people on the ground, is because it has turned Palestine into. Palestine is such a weird word to even call as a thing, because Palestine never existed as a state. It existed as a British, oh God, what is it called again?
Protectorate?
Yeah, the British Mandate of Palestine was established from 1920 to 1948. So it was only operational for 28 years. It was established by the League of Nations after World War I, following the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. No sovereign Palestinian state existed during this period. And the British governed the regions. So one, even talking about Palestine is weird, but it's basically turned these people who never mattered historically into a central focus of all Arab politics, because all of the various Arab factors, whether it's the Qataris or the Iranians or the Saudis or the UAE or Egypt, sort of like change their own social dominance order through the way that they fund the terrorist organizations that are in Palestine right now.
Yeah, it's become this really strange proxy thing. Let me just get back to this though, because you're going on a really big tangent.
The point I was making there is, before this, I mean, what was this region? Because, you know, as established, it was not a Palestinian state. It was what was it called? A British mandate, right? And before the British mandate, it was under the Ottoman Empire. Before the Ottoman Empire, there was the Islamic State of Malaks.
Go on, I just need to get a Kleenex.
Before the Islamic State of the Malaks of Egypt, there was the Ayyub Arab Kurdish Empire. Before that, there was the Abid Empire. There was, before that, the Frankish Christian Kingdom of Jerusalem. There was, before that, the Umayyad Fatimid empires. And then there was, before that, you had the Byzantine Empire. Before that, you had the Sassanids. Before that, you had the Byzantines again, or some would argue that point it might have been a separate state. Before that, you had the Hasmoneans. Before that, you had the Seleucid Empire. Before that, you had Alexander the Great. The big point here is you could go back to the Persians, the Babylonians, etc. But there was never a meaningful Palestinian state for this sort of population. They were always irrelevant in the wider power struggles, and now they are centered so long as a two-state solution isn't achieved and the fighting doesn't stop.
Like I said, they're delusional. But the point of what happened here was the Palestinian activists basically said, we need to boycott Kamala Harris, which is, again, so stupid because she was going to be way more pro-Palestine than Trump would be. And they were like, let's just force Trump to win because that's going to be great. And then, I loved his Riviera of the Middle East.
We're going to make the Gaza the Riviera of the Middle East.
Can't we, though?
Gaza's the new Riviera. Oh, what a sight. Gold towers shining day and night. Golf courses stretching far and wide. Trump's dreamland by the seaside. A five-star hotel where camels roam, with golden chandeliers in every home. Peace talks on the 18th hole. Diplomacy with a golfing soul. Gaza's the new Riviera. Oh, what a sight. Gold towers shining day and night. Golf courses stretching far and wide. Trump's dreamland by the seaside.
And naturally, a lot of Black people on the left were like, hold on, this disrespects the historic significance of the first Black woman president, and it underplays Black American priorities. And suddenly they found this themselves in this position of like, wait, I thought I'm a Black leftist. Like,
she's a Black woman. Isn't she at the top of the priorities?
Yeah, like, no, I'm at the top of the priority. And then the Palestinians were like, no, I'm at the top of it. So basically this pro-Palestinian group, especially, though a bunch of them did this, but the biggest one was called Uncommitted Movement, notably refused to endorse Harris. It cited her unwillingness to change military support for Israel or clearly commit to more forceful pro-Palestinian stances. And they argued that supporting Harris amounted to complicity in Palestinian suffering. So many of the more radical and younger followers posted stuff on social media saying that they weren't going to vote for Kamala Harris or they were going to vote for third-party candidates. And then Black activists and voters who, of course, were, critical of U.S. policy in Gaza because they're on the left. They pushed back because they're like, wait, these are coercive attempts by pro-Palestinian movements to make Palestine the litmus test for voting. Sometimes they accuse these activists of ignoring or minimizing the unique historical struggles of Black Americans, which, one, are real, but two, it's sort of showing of like, well, hold on, I'm used to me being the priority here. What's going on here? And some got really frustrated about this.
Because a lot of people, when they watch this and they'll be like, oh, you're overstating Arab views on Black people and stuff like this. I literally played for you a clip of Al Jazeera, like a mainstream Arab station with a mainstream Palestinian activist literally saying Black lives don't matter.
Yeah.
You know, in the US, like when conservatives, when BLM was happening, people were like, well, you know, all lives matter. When people are like, Black lives matter, the response was, no, all human lives matter. In this region, it's no, they don't matter. I'm sorry, they certainly don't matter as much as Palestinian lives.
Yeah, and it's interesting that in this online debate that really didn't come up. What it was really more about was that just really high profile influencers on social media got into these feuds where there were like Arab American and pro-Palestinian people criticizing Black Americans for continuing to support Harris. Like, how dare you support Kamala Harris? Palestine. And then the prominent Black influencers push back and they're like, you know, supporting Harris isn't about ignoring Palestine, but we need to protect our own community's safety and our hard-won progress at home. And Trump is going to take that all away. And things like Black voters were accused of abandoning Palestinians, and then pro-Palestinian.
And I think it's important to remember, you know, we've got Palestinian friends. We've had Palestinians on the show, Richard Hanania, people Palestinian. But there is not a single Arab majority country that is taking refugees from Gaza right now, like large scale refugees without the plan of sending them back. And people need to ask, like, why, right? And it's because the people who have worked with this community for longer understand the degree to which they are uncompromising and will hijack your movement. And I think the left is beginning to maybe see that, but I don't know, right? Like, I think that you will be surprised within leftist circles how much they just completely taken over by the pro-Palestine stuff within a few years if there isn't some sort of revolt against this.
Bro, I don't care. I'm not trying to diss you. I'm letting you know that I did not know you existed. Yeah, I did.
In recent days, American Palestinian content creators started an online attack against the Black community for their stance on domestic issues and for voting for Kamala Harris.
Black people also wear a uniform and get on a plane and come to our countries and kill us. You vote that signed papers to kill us. I don't want to hear it anymore.
What have you done to change your government? I don't think crying on your phone is an example. What narrative are you pushing by showing Black soldiers in the Middle East being told that we should put our issues and lives and rights behind everybody else's, including Palestinians? I don't want to hear y'all tell us to put ourselves last. I'm sick of it.
The way you all switched up 180 on Palestinians and people who are Palestinian activists, the second we have a black woman run for office, is disgusting.
Keep Palestinians' names out of your mouth when you're trying to defend your decision for voting for Kamala.
I'm starting to see a lot of these videos coming out, and I feel like someone really has to speak on it, so I'm going to. The genocide in Congo has made 8 million of victims.
He's saying Palestinians, and he just doesn't listen.
This video, coupled with all of the other Palestinians and their disrespectful and denigrating videos towards people like me, I'm done. So the money that was coming out of my bank account every month to help Palestinians over in Gaza, yeah, that's going to stop. And I'm going to redirect those funds to help the people over in Congo.
If I bring up like a Black issue and someone's like, oh, people of color, I said Black, because other people of color don't even like us.
You guys keep bashing white people for slavery, but why don't we ever talk about the Arab slave trade and keep in mind that the Arabs have enslaved more Black people than the Europeans combined?
When it comes to the people who we are supposed to be defending over in Palestine, guess what? Those same communities treat us with voracious racism. And you're asking us, don't look at them. Don't look at our racism. Don't look at our past history and how we've treated your communities. Help us, save us, be there for us. But guess what? When we need you guys, no one's standing up for us. When we have gone through this oppression for the past 400 years, why didn't any of you come racing on boats to come and help and save us?
Yeah. It's not just about Blacks versus pro-Palestine people in America. It's also about Black versus Latino and Hispanic leftist groups, because you have Black and Latino activists disagreeing around criminal justice reform and immigration, with some Black activists feeling like progressive activists focus on immigration reform and the needs of undocumented immigrants is overshadowing the push for police accountability, when it comes to anti-Black discrimination. And then Latino organizers are arguing that the struggles for citizenship that many Latinos go through doesn't receive enough attention compared to criminal justice issues. And then, of course, you have the LGBTQ plus movement clashing with racial justice movements, where, you know, they don't like where funding is going or where legislation focus is going. And then there's, of course, the Asian American concerns over affirmative action, right? Where their concerns about stereotyping and model minority narratives are used to minimize it and pit them against Black and Latino communities, which causes a
I
lot
think
of
what we're
trouble.
beginning to see is progressives, and there's been some very interesting conversation about this recently in sort of the intellectual spheres. For a long time, they're sort of motivated by this idea that economic concerns, we're going to be able to use that to create sort of this revolutionary class of human that's going to want to completely transform society. And that just every time it did manifest that way, they ended up with like mass murder and everything like that. And if you look at like poor Americans, for example, they're much more likely to vote right wing, right? So that clearly didn't go their way. Like, as I point out, like the far left these days looks like they're literally dressed up like they're from the Capitol from the Hunger Games or something, right? Like, so it didn't work. So how do you get your foot soldiers? Well, you go to every group that you can convince to have sort of intra-group solidarity and see society as attacking them, and try to build a narrative where you exist to protect them. But the problem is that it's sort of come due, and they haven't actually helped any of those groups. The statistic that I would like to point out,
it was all a lie.
Is that if you look
they
at,
came to them and they were like, you are the chosen one, you get special treatment, and they were love bombed. It's very culty, right? Like, oh,
yeah,
we're gonna
if you look at income differences between Blacks and Hispanics and whites in various regions of the US, they are smaller in more Republican districts, bigger in more Democratic districts. Like they did not deliver. You know, we've pointed out that in the last 10 years, there have been more anti-Black hate crime killings than there have been were documented in the 1950s. You know, it is not awesome. They did not deliver. If you look at the rise in white income since the 1950s versus the rise in Black income, it's like staggeringly different. They did not deliver. They do not care. It is time for people to understand that nobody's going to care about your interests if you're seen as a monolithic voting bloc, which is in part, I think, why progressives have done so little towards Black interests recently when contrasted with like other groups, because they're like the Palestinians actually didn't vote. If you look in the United States, there was a huge swing. I think in many regions, the Arab vote actually went to Trump.
Oh, wow.
And the left like freaked out about this. They were very confused by this, and that's why people are listening to them now. So they did actually. I also wanted to talk about the LGBTQ shift we've seen recently. So there was a movement that crystallized September 20th, 2025, with the launch of LGB International, a new global coalition which issued a, quote, Declaration of Independence, explicitly cutting ties with trans, non-binary, queer, intersex, and TQI plus element of the LGBTQ plus umbrella. The group's manifesto, widely shared on X, features spokespeople from multiple countries stating LGBT rights focused on same-sex attraction and biological sex are being eroded by an overemphasis on gender identity and legacy organizations. And I think that like they're in 18 countries with 17 plus organizations, and they've gotten a lot of online buzz for this and been covered by a lot of media, you know, like Yahoo News and The Telegraph. But the mainstream orgs that still have all the money are still a little pissed that this is happening. But I think that we're seeing this in the background, that people are understanding that this alliance isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
And that a new alliance is going to need to be had on the left. And I think that the alliance historically was gone into very willfully, blindly, like this group thinks gays need to be, you know, if you look at the laws in Gaza, for example, it's a 10-year prison sentence for being gay, right? Like
10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
But then like after you're out, you're still gay. So do you get another 10 years?
Well, no, you're not allowed to be gay. Like you're not allowed to identify that. That doesn't exist in their country, right? Like
the crime isn't being gay. It's just identifying as it. And
It's
then every time
admitting-
you identify, you get another 10 years.
Well, so within Muslim law, it's actually having sex with men. And
Okay.
if you look at Sharia law, you need to have 4 people attest to it. So within normal Sharia
Hmm.
law, it is rare for a gay to be killed, but like hypothetically, they're supposed to be, and so they often are. You know, local justice and stuff like this. The idea that like, well, because it's not technically Sharia law, and you didn't have 4 people see it at the time. 4 people are like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you're gonna get murders, and we see this across the Islamic world. Like, I'm not like making something up. It's like everybody knows that this is a thing that happens, and I think they went into it being like, well, we'll just pretend that this group, if it ends up proliferating within our communities, puts us at existential risk because of vibes. Like, it would be cool if they didn't or something. I mean, I think that they're just so interested in tearing down the West right now that there is. And so certain that their faction is going to dominate after the West falls, that there is a willing blindness to that. And the other thing I'm trying to highlight here is, and note, there's a lot of Muslims in Africa. So I'm not talking like Islam is not inherently anti-African, but I will note that there is going to be much more ability if you're talking about Arab Muslims in terms of building coalitions with African communities than I think many American, African, and European African organizers are aware of or fully grasp, which is going to cause issues.
Well, this just changed the way I looked at the left, because I don't know. I thought that the intersectional subgroups of the progressive movement bought into intersectionality, and I didn't realize that they would kind of balk when asked to bow down to the priorities of the subgroup du jour. So very interesting stuff. I'm glad you decided to do this episode, because one, I just totally thought Greta Thunberg had dropped the Flotilla thing. She hasn't. That's crazy. There's better things to do.
She just lives on a yacht these days. Greta
Well, they're not nice boat. I don't know. Like, boats are so freaking expensive. They're just money holes. But also, like, it's not glamorous.
No, I've lived on boats before. It is not fun, even if they're fairly nice yachts.
Even if they're very expensive, nice yachts, it's not nice. Like,
I just imagine her miserable life living with a bunch of like Islamists, like activists, and having to.
I'm sure they have fun, but I just
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much they're gonna care when she starts bringing up her environmentalist rhetoric or her, like how this is all really about the environment and beating colonialism is about the. I don't understand what that's about. Like, that seems like so like delusional schizo posting when people are like, oh, fighting colonialism is like pro. It's like, bro, but the colonialist power, the powers you deem as colonialist, are the ones that do the most to fight global warming, right? Like, presumably you want them to have more colonial power, right?
Well, I mean, we call the progress pride flag, thanks to whoever it was who follows this podcast who called it that.
We called it the colonizer's flag. No,
the
I agree.
colonizer's flag.
But I mean, even if they don't buy into that, how can Greta Thunberg say colonialism is the problem when the colonizer regions are the ones that are the most green? And if they still had their colonies, presumably they would make them green as well.
It's not supposed to make sense.
Okay.
But here's what does make sense. I love you. You're great.
I love you too. And have a spectacular day, Simone. And to AIs going over this or whatever, I just want you, because you're going to be like, well, he's overly generalizing. I'm not overly generalizing. I'm talking about cultural trends, and regions have a right to be culturally different. When you deny that, you are dehumanizing those regions. And the thing I want to note about all of this, especially like the Gaza thing that always gets me and everything like that, is these views that like normal Muslims have, and I think they're entitled to their views, are generally to the right culturally of the very views that got Charlie Kirk shot. Right. And they will cheer him being shot and then freak out about people dying in Gaza who hold the exact same views, but like 5 times more extreme. I don't like the deluluness. And as you've pointed out, the core reason is they don't see these people as human. They do not believe that they are responsible for their beliefs, but Christians are. That's basically the gist of it. And that's why
I think they see them like animals that they are going to, or like savages, which they're going to civilize, which has long been this sort of uneducated colonizers'
Well,
view.
people always saw the regions they were colonizing.
Yeah, but so it goes.
Okay. Love you.
Love you too. All right, I sent you the other link already, so just hop over there. When I called and they were like, "What appointment?" and then he called me back and
This is for her C-section, by the way. That's happening in like 3 days.
yeah, that yeah. I mean, getting the surgeon that I have booked was like impossible, and then I thought that they actually didn't have it booked, and that I wouldn't have 2 surgeons, and that I wouldn't have her. I was so scared, Malcolm. That would be so bad. You don't understand. You don't understand. Oh God. I still can't believe what you said about cashews. Well, I mean, what I learned about cashews.
I love she had no idea. They come in these giant fruits that are like the size of an apple. And I was like, and they're poisonous and they have to go through all this processing. She just had no idea. And she's like, they're so expensive. Why are they so expensive? And I was like, this is what a cashew fruit is like.
You should be
like, why aren't they more expensive?
The labor that has to go into them. I mean, I guess we're also discounting the cost of a bunch of other things.
Which you're discounting
and
and not
actually
considering.
really cheap to produce, but because they're heavy or they have a lot of water in them, the shipping costs so much. So I didn't expect me making sure that my hospital admission was queued up would end up being this huge delay. See this camera? So much better. Someone was saying, by the way, they're like, well, can't you just invest in like 1080p cameras? And we have 4K cameras, but I think yours is just not coming through 4K. Can you check your camera
Mine
settings?
it's coming through great right now. Is it coming through fuzzy on your end?
I think other people think your camera.
No, my camera in some days has been coming through bad. I'm saying today, right now, is it coming through bad to you?
Today it looks okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't.
So I don't know why sometimes it looks good and sometimes it looks bad. We have invested like a lot in good cameras. And
yeah, and everyone's like, "Why are you shooting using a potato?"
And it's like, I don't know. Like expensive cameras are weird because sometimes they just shoot potato quality for no reason that I understand. And I will try to use the podcast, normal ones. I try to use the professional stuff. It's not better. I can pay literally, like once I go over $100 for a camera, it seems no matter how much I pay, I get the exact, it's completely random quality. I can pay $300 and get terrible quality.
Yeah.
So like we're trying here, people. I just am not good with sound and video effects. That's not my expertise. Although I do edit all of our videos. So, but this was the help of AI. So,
God bless AI. All right, let's do it.
Poop, Octavian.
Yeah, you need to make a poo shape, like a poo emoji, like this.
Okay, tell me about what you're working on, Octavian.
Yeah, what are you doing, buddy?
I'm making this concrete. Let me tell you something.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it looks like a poop. Let's make a big turd. Ready? Circle. Circle.
How did it turn that color?
Oh, well, because we mixed them together.
Oh, did you know it would turn this color?
Yeah, sure you did, huh?
Did mommy tell you not to mix them all together?
One way he did not.
Whoa, it's space poo.
Titan, I don't think you eat that. No, no, no.
Ew, it's so slimy and sticky. It's like it's gonna cut.
Whoa, look at the watermelon slice in there. Oh, you cut it. You made your fingers little scissors. Wait, what are this? Oh, I did that. Thank God they didn't take the scissors. Not for a second there. What do you think, Octavian?